Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. So today we have a build around the new featured location. And for those of you that don't know, featured locations come up once a week and they are in effect for 2 days. And for those 2 days, they have a 40% higher chance of occurring in each match that you play. And so for this week, we have the peak. The peak, each card in your hand swaps its power and its cost. So, of course, naturally, you instantly go to thinking of a Mr. Negative, because what is better than dropping Mr. Negative on turn 4, having Mr. Negative in hand on turn 1, and then you can drop it. I don't want to build a Mr. Negative deck. And so actually, I'm going with something a little bit different. It does have good elements that could benefit from getting Mr. Negative, but it also has a lot of counter components. This is probably the deck list that I've ran that has the most counterplay possibilities. So this is very Q-esque. So for those of you that haven't been on the channel very long or maybe haven't caught very many of our live streams, Q is an enjoyer of the stream. We match up against him quite often during our live streams, and he always has a really crazy counter style deck. A lot of times he has a sneaky leech or leader play or something that just really blocks the opponent's, or in that case, play line. And so a lot of these cards kind of remind me of a Q-esque build. And so we do have these strong cards that benefit from a Mr. Negative style buff. So like the Ronin, the Mystique, the Taskmaster, Arnim Zola, all are great for a Mr. Negative list, but we also have counterplay cards. I anticipate running into a lot of Mr. Negatives. And so with this list, we have a lot of ways to counter those builds. So we have the Rogue that can steal an ongoing ability, Enchantress that can cancel out an entire lane of ongoing abilities. We have Cosmo that can protect our upside, so if we have a Ronin on the board, we can make sure that they can't Rogue or Enchantress it. We have Leech, which is going to take all of their cards and remove their abilities. Huge counterplay potential. We have Sandman, which you're going to realize Sandman was not in the first couple of games. I had a Professor X in his slot, but Sandman always deserved to be in this list. If we get inverted on turn 1 and we have Sandman in hand, we can actually drop a turn 1 Sandman, which with our counterplay potential, with the amount of power we can push with things like Morph or Ronin or Arnim Zola leader, Sandman is going to benefit us for a large portion of the game. And then we also have Shang-Chi, which is another counterplay. Just so much counter potential and kind of like sneaky play lines that this deck list feels really fun to run. So running through the deck list really quickly. First up, we have Morph. Morph is going to be a really good card to drop on curve. So if they do get inverted, they play a lot of their cards, or maybe they don't. We can hit a potentially high roll play with Morph more often than we draw into duds. And then we have Mystique. She's going to copy one of our ongoing abilities, whether that be Cosmo to protect 2 locations from on-reveal abilities, whether that be Ronin to have a secondary big power push onto the board, whether it be whatever we stole from Rogue. There's a lot of decent targets for our Mystique in this list, and if it comes in at 0 cost, even better. And then we have Rogue. Rogue is going to steal one of the opponent's ongoing abilities. With a location like Peak, where we anticipate a lot of Mr. Negative lists, we are already in a really strong ongoing meta. Rogue is going to be able to steal one of those really powerful ones before we shut the rest of them down with Enchantress. Just a lot of great utility from Rogue, and if she gets inverted, she becomes a 1 cost, which is an incredible upside as well. And then we have Cosmo. Cosmo is going to protect our cards from getting hit with things like Enchantress or Rogue or even Shang-Chi. Being able to throw this into a Nidavellir location will protect our cards from any kind of downside and just serve us pretty well overall. And then we have Sandman. Sandman is going to be incredible in this list. Being able to drop him on turn 1 or even on turn 4 right after the opponent drops a Mr. Negative is going to mitigate a lot of their upside, and having a leader as a follow-up play on turn 6 is going to offer us a huge amount of board presence. We could also drop a Ronin on 5 into a leader on 6 to really sneak away games. Sometimes all we need are those 3 cards to win. And then we have Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi is not going to be as good as like an Enchantress or a Rogue, but he's still a really good target for, let's say they have an inverted Ronin, an inverted Devil Dino. Shang-Chi is going to be able to take away a lot of that upside from that lane in a lot of scenarios. And then we have Enchantress. She's going to wipe that lane of all ongoing abilities, which is going to be phenomenal for us. She doesn't benefit from being inverted, but she doesn't get any downside from it either. And then we have Ronin. Ronin is just insanely strong. having him potentially inverted or even dropping him at 5 after we dropped a Sandman on 4 so they can't play more than 1 card per turn. Ronin can be a huge power presence, and a lot of times is going to be like that winning or deciding factor in allowing us to play the rest of our combo pieces. And then next up we have Taskmaster. Taskmaster is in here as a little bit of like spice. If he gets hit with an inversion, we can always drop him alongside the Ronin play, alongside the Mystique that copied the Ronin. Just a lot of really good upside from Taskmaster in this list. Since we have some pretty high power presences onto the board, we can usually sneak out quite a bit of power with either a 5-cost Taskmaster, but more than likely we'd want to use him when he is 0 cost. And then we have Leech. I am so glad that Leech is getting a usage. Leech at 5 cost can sometimes feel underwhelming. Leech at 3 cost and 5 power is phenomenal. Not only can we impact all of their cards that are already in their hand, so if it is a Mr. Negative list, we can impact a lot of potentially really good Honorville cards. A lot of times this takes them by surprise. We can do this, and then if for some reason we think they're going to extend the game with Magic or there's Limbo already on the field, we can always hit this with an Arnim Zola, which is going to be really niche, but that would allow us to re-trigger that Honorville later on. But more than likely, we are just going to hit the Leech once and then just kind of coast out the rest of the game and go with a leader play at the end once they draw into some non-leeched cards. And then we have Arnim Zola. Arnim Zola is going to allow us to duplicate, maneuver, and just push our cards in sneaky ways. A lot of times they're not going to really anticipate an Arnim Zola. If it gets inverted, that's great. He's a 0 cost 6 power card that has a really good Honorville ability, even at 6 cost. If we're just pushing something like a Ronin, maybe something we rogued, something we mystiqued, Arnim Zola is going to still have some really good targets in this list. And then finally, we have Leader. Leader is going to be that flexibility piece for us. If we are in a pretty good spot, we've dropped Leader, we have the board presence already, we can drop Leader on the board. That helps us guarantee that we maintain that lead. And then even without Sandman, if they're running a slower deck, so something like a Mr. Negative, where they drop Mr. Negative on 4, we can copy their inverted cards on 6 by dropping Leader, or on 7 if Magic has been played, but just a lot of really good usage from the Leader in this list. And so that is the rundown of the deck list. We are going to go ahead and jump into a few games. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, so first up we have Crimson. The first location is the Crimson Cosmos, which is kind of fitting for their name. We do have Morph in hand, which is going to be great to drop on 3. We don't have the cards inverted. We have Titan, which will reduce the cost of our Arnim Zola or our Leader by 1. So we get a little bit of flexibility there. And then we'll see what this last location is. If it's Peak, that's great. If not, I think we still have a decent play line here. So let's go ahead and play our Morph into Titan. I think that's going to be the play line we want to go with. We might end up doing like a Shang-Chi into Nidavellir, depending on how much power they have. Or maybe we end up doing a big card drop there. We copy it with Taskmaster, ooh, the Iron Man is huge. And so now we're actually going to be able to play Mystique to copy that Iron Man's ability, which is phenomenal. So let's go with the Mystique to copy our Iron Man ability, which was a huge morph target, huge. We do have a pretty strong board presence in Nidavellir, so something like a Shang-Chi is going to be really formidable. We can at least take out their Khazar, which will, of course, reduce the power of their Ant-Man overall. We could just do a lot of pretty good plays here. So we can go with like an Arnim Zola, which will move our Iron Man here and here. It looks like they're trying to shoot for like locking down a location. So let's go with the Leech play here. No, I think we go with the Leech play just to make it hard for them to kind of play cards that they want to. They can play a card in Crimson Cosmos. We're going to leave that potentially open for them to do like a Professor X. If so, I think it puts them pretty far behind on the curve. We're going to have a somewhat decent power push in mid with the 6 power from Leech and Iron Man, and we just have to really react to what they drop here. All right, so they actually end up locking down Nidavellir, which is not what I would have anticipated. So let's go with the good old Leader. I think that's a pretty safe bet. We go with the Leader. If they go with a Rogue to steal our Iron Man, we go with the Rogue to steal it back. I think we're good. I would snap, but I don't know that they stay along, and I just want to see the leader play out. And so let's go ahead and lock that in. I think that should be our best play line, especially knowing how much of an advantage we have with having an Iron Man on the board already. I think it's okay that we lose the Nidavellir location. All right, so they go with 2 cards. They go with an Ebony Maw and then they go with a Spectrum to buff up their ongoing cards, but it was leeched, and so they're not going to get the upside from it. We win the Crimson Cosmos and Titan location. They can have their Nidavellir. We don't need it. Abnormal was actually inverted or leeched as well, so it wouldn't have gotten the benefit from the Spectrum. If it had, then we would have copied it. But we come in with a sneaky leader play, very, very Q-esque, very, very Q-like, and I'm kind of enjoying it. Let's go ahead and jump into the next one, see if we can keep it going. All right, next up we have Vin Kelsier, which is one of the minds in the Snap.fan Discord that helps kind of brew and come up with efficient deck lists. And so maybe this is going to be something, maybe this is a sneak peek and we get an early look at something that they're kind of working on or brewing. Or maybe they're just kind of playing around with the featured location. And so either way, I mean, we haven't seen the featured location in quite some time. We don't get any kind of great benefit from Camartage. So I'm actually going to go ahead and just throw our Cosmo into that lane as is. I guess we could do like a Ronin and a Mystique, and then we could do Arnim Zola, which would duplicate both of them. But I mean, overall, not a huge benefit from it. We could always Mystique to copy the Cosmo ability, but I think we hold it. I think we hold for now. We see a little bit about what they drop, and then we kind of play around it and see from there. It is turn 5, which it got late. It got late really quickly. I think we go with maybe a Ronin, and then next turn we can go with a Taskmaster to copy the Ronin, or we can go with a leader, which would kind of keep the curve as well. So I think we go with that. I think Ronin is going to be a good bet for us. He has 7 cards in his hand right now, and so let's see if we can get some decent upside from it. And so we get the Ronin, which is going to be a big board presence. It can't be hit with like an Enchantress or a Rogue because of the protection of Cosmo. And so let's go ahead and play our leader into the Lechugia. As long as he doesn't use a magic here, I think we're relatively safe. So let's go ahead and lock that in. We copy whatever's played into the Gia, which turns out to be a Typhoid Mary. Interesting. But because of our leader, we still keep the lead. We keep the lead in Camartage, and we end up locking down the game. I'm really enjoying seeing some of these like brewed decks that are outside of that standard. I was expecting to run into a lot of Mr. Negative today, and that's why we have a lot of the like strong counters. We have at least 2 ways to deal with strong ongoing abilities in this list. I was expecting to see a whole lot of them today, so it is nice to see kind of some other kind of deck builds, and we're gonna go ahead and jump into the next one. All right, so next up we have Corporate. I don't know who called Corporate or why they came down or what you guys have been doing. Maybe they heard that Peak was not showing up as often as it should, but they put an end to that, guys. They put an end to it right here and right now. So we do get the really good inverted Ronin, inverted Taskmaster. Oh, and actually I meant to put a Sandman in this deck list somewhere because he's going to be great for being hit with an inversion as well. I think after this game we sub out Professor X for a Sandman. Professor X is great, but he is counterintuitive for like an Arnim Zola. I think after this we probably sub out the Professor X for a Sandman. So they hit a Punisher inversion. We have a huge Ronin Taskmaster play. Ronin oh my gosh. No way. No way the TVA comes up. We have everything. We have everything. And I'm actually going to snap here, and we're actually going to play those cards onto the board. So on the off chance that they are running a Leech and it got reversed, they can play Leech this turn. But as long as they stay in this turn, there's going to be no additional cubes gamed for winning after next turn. So as long as they stay here, they're not going to lose anything additional after next turn because it goes up to 2, and at the end of TVA, it's not going to double it. And so let's go ahead and do we will do Ronin, we will do Mystique, and we will do a Taskmaster, all of which are going to be massive. I don't know that they have a way to overcome that amount of power. That is just going to be a huge turn 3. Absolutely nasty, absolutely ridiculous, absolutely not deserved as well. And so the Taskmaster would have copied a higher power Ronin, but we wouldn't have been able to play the Mystique after that point. And so that is why we went with this over something potentially different. And so we have the first reveal. So I think we're just going to play a Shang-Chi into TVA. If they have like an Enchantress, that's fine. They can take one lane, we win the other 2. Just an absolute Oh, the peak into TVA is the peak of content creation. Oh my gosh, that is, I feel bad. Corporate, please don't fire me, corporate. You were just coming down for your quarterly audits and we just we demolished you. I'm sorry. All right, so next up we have Saurian, and something that you guys did not see. I did just play against Saurian. The second location was I'm drawing a blank, but the second location was the one that inverts cards. And so I actually played an inverted Professor X and Mystique on turn 3, which ended up locking down all of the locations. Saurian had a huge inverted hand and ended up like obliterating us in all lanes by like 50. So that we were going a little bit high roll, but I think we go a little bit safer here. We have some great alternatives. We have Morph, we have Mystique, we have Leech, which is what we are going to go with. Knowing that he's running a strong like Mr. Negative deck list, Leech is going to be just a heartbreaker. Dropping it on turn 3 is going to be so massive that it's going to be really hard to compete with. So they do get the Mr. Negative off, but we still have things like our Rogue that we can drop. We morph into a Magic, and so now there's actually a turn 7, which feels kind of bad. But that is okay. We have some strong counterplays to the cards in the card lists in this deck. And so let's go with the Leech play here. The Leech play is going to be massive. Going with like a late game Rogue into Nidavellir is going to be so detrimental. We can always do a Shang-Chi to take out these cards. We just have a lot of counterplay potential, especially when looking at and going against a Mr. Negative list. And so we are going to hit him with the Leech, which always feels awful, man. Always feels so awful. Getting him out on turn 3, at least in the next couple days, massive. That is so huge. We could lock down the Limbo lane, but I don't know that we want to. I think that's a little bit greedy because we do have other counter cards that we can draw. We have Enchantress. We have a lot of counterplay. Let's just skip this turn. I think playing the Professor X is just pushing it a little bit too much, although it looks like we would have been able to maintain our lead by having that extra 5 power. But just overall, I think it was a safer bet. And so we can go with a Ronin. We can multiply the Ronin ability with our Mystique into Nidavellir, which I think we do. I think we go ahead. There's no advantage for us holding it. They're not going to really want to drop an Enchantress. If we do, they cap this one out. We then have that counterplay in the Shang-Chi. The Ronin's going to be really strong over here. If they don't counter it, then we can go with a Cosmo to make sure that they can't use an Enchantress or anything to steal that ability. We just have a lot of play around potential in this list. So they get an inverted Bishop, which is not huge for them. It's not great, but it's not incredibly terrible either. And so we draw into leader. I think what we do here is we just drop Cosmo. I don't think we drop one of our other cards. I think we hold it and wait. We can always do both a Shang-Chi and a Rogue on the last turn to steal a strong ongoing ability. If they drop a strong ongoing ability here, maybe we end up losing the Limbo location. So something like an Iron Man becomes kind of tough to win with. But otherwise I think we're okay. Let's go with we turn first, but let's go with the Shang-Chi to destroy what they have here. And then we will also go with the Rogue. No. And then we'll also go with a Professor X. Professor X is going to be the best at locking down the lane and making sure nothing else can be destroyed. Even if they steal our Ronin ongoing ability, it's only going to be 9 plus 5. They're going to have all 3 of these cards taken out. And so I think it's an easy win. I don't see a way around it. We protect our lane from the counter Shang-Chi play, and we Shang-Chi their almost entire Nidavellir location. And so our Professor X should protect our upside with a massive 10 power. And then they have the Iron Man come in, and so it is 10 power presence, but it's not going to be quite enough. They drop a Sarah, so they do win the Limbo location, but we win Nidavellir by 35. And so we do get a little bit of payback, a little bit of revenge, because that I knew it was going to be a high roll. I was just hoping that on that last game, Saurian was going to hold their cards and hold their power, but they dumped it all onto the board on that turn, and it ended up backfiring. And so this time we were able to get a little bit of payback from the crazy counters. All right, so next up we have the question. And the question is, are we going to flip into the peak here or not? Mirror Dimension's kind of an interesting hit if this is the peak, because then it could hit the peak again and invert our inverted cards back to normal, which I think would be hilarious. So I'm really hoping for the peak here. Now we get Onslaught Citadel. Onslaught Citadel is pretty strong for us. We have a Ronin, we have Mystique, we have Rogue, and we also have Cosmo to stop them from stealing any of our ongoing cards. And so we're going to go ahead and skip here. They go with a morph into a Rogue, which is fine. That could have been a Professor X, it could have been a Ronin, could have been such good cards, but they just weren't quite able to get there. So let's go ahead and go with a morph into the Gia. I know that we will draw into rocks after that. We're going to shuffle 3 rocks into our deck. I think we have great resources already that we don't necessarily need to worry about what we're going to draw or top deck for the rest of the game. So they actually play Mr. Negative and shuffle in 3 rocks into their list as well, which is a really interesting choice, because now their drawing is not going to be as consistent. And so I think we go with a Ronin into the Onslaught Citadel to just make it absolutely massive. We could potentially draw into Taskmaster. We could also do a Mystique next turn. We could do a Mystique and a Cosmo, but it looks like they didn't get any like great cards, so they do end up retreating. But we will not count that as one of the like 6 or so games that we play. We're just going to rinse and repeat. All right, so next up we have Bucky, but I can't be the only one that thought this, but with the latest patch, they added a little purple space, little purple period at the end of your name when you're loading into a game. I thought I was losing a pixel. Almost every time I see it, I think my screen is going out in that one particular space. Am I the only one? Am I crazy? Might be crazy. But next up we have Bucky. We are going to skip turn 1 and turn 2. We'll drop Morph on 3 on Curve, and then we'll see what this location is. If it turns out to be the peak, that's great. We get a lot of really good upside from it. It is Xandar, which is still good. It's not as good, but it's good. We can do a Morph to see what we end up pulling into. If it's something we really want to protect, we can always do like a Cosmo behind it. So we morph into a Mr. Negative. So we know that they have Mr. Negative coming down this turn. That's huge. It's huge. It's huge. So the first card we get after drawing it, after playing their Mr. Negative, is a leech. So we're going to leech absolutely everything they have in their hand. Luckily our deck is okay getting inversed because we wanted to get some upside from the peak location if we draw into it. And so it's not our main win condition, but it is nice when it happens. So we're gonna go ahead and play a leech into the dream dimension. That's gonna counter a lot of what they play. They're gonna play a Mr. Negative this turn. It's only natural, it makes sense. But the cards they currently have in hand, so if they had an Arnim Zola, if they had an Iron Man, if they had, all of their decently powered cards, they're no longer going to be beneficial for them. And so after this turn, we're going to pull into one of our cards, none of which feel like they would be good to be pulled into. I'm actually not going to play this turn. We could play like a Cosmo or something similar. I'm just going to wait it out. I'm going to hope that Cosmo gets pulled here because that's or maybe Enchantress because that's the least impactful of them. But overall, it's not great. Ooh, so we hit their Wolfsbane, so it ends up being a 1-cost card. We do pull into Rogue, unfortunately, and it flips last, or else oh no, their Blue Marvel was hit with Leech as well. Absolutely brutal turn. So we have the inverted Mystique. We don't have anything for it to copy just yet. If they drew into a Magic, this feels like a poor play. But otherwise, I think it's going to be a decent way to kind of balance out the board because our Mystique will make sure we're winning this lane. Our leader will make sure we're winning this one. And then if they play a Magic, that's just something we'll have to deal with. But otherwise, we get a pretty good advantage on this last turn. So they hit a Rogue, which is of course not going to target anything. They hit a Mystique, which is also not going to target anything. And then finally they do hit the Magic in Dream Dimension, which is unfortunate. But we do end up capping out the Xandar location. No, wait. It was an abilityless Magic. So they didn't get to extend the game with Magic. They would have, but they couldn't. So the Leech is absolutely ruthless for these Mr. Negative deck lists. And having the leader kind of follow it up at the end is huge. Absolutely huge. because then if they do get a lucky top deck, we can copy that, especially dropping a leech on 3. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. All right, so next up we have Paris. The first location is Superflow. We have Sandman in hand, so if we draw into Peak, we're going to be able to play him for 1 cost. We're going to be able to get him out on the board early, and really start prohibiting the opponent. And even if not, we can actually get him out onto the board on 3 because of the Superflow. And so I think that's going to be pretty good for us. We have decent power pushes otherwise, and decent counters to anything that they play as well. Oh, so we do get the Peak here, which is the peak of performance. I don't know. What we're gonna do, we're gonna go for a really big gamble here, like really big gamble. So we're gonna play. This is dumb. So we're gonna play Morph, who is going to morph into 1 card from their list. We don't know what. It could be any number of things. We are then going to Arnim Zola that morph into the Superflow and X-Mansion before we end up dropping our Mystique onto the board, before we end up dropping our Sandman onto the board, therefore limiting us both to 1 card per turn after this. So they drop a blue Marvel, but that's fine. That's honestly fine. We morph into a Rogue, which what? No way. It's so bad. I'm so sorry, Paris. You did not deserve this in the least. You did not ask for this. You did not deserve this. But it happened, and we are absolutely fine with this. So So our morph comes in absolutely clutch. He ends up being a rogue, which steals their blue Marvel's ability. It then gets hit with Arnim Zola. It becomes 2 blue Marvels across the board. We then drop Sandman. Our Mystique copies the Sandman ability, and then to add insult injury, we get a blue Marvel from X-Mansion, which it's too soon. It's just too soon. Let's go with a Cosmo into this middle location. We want to protect our all of our ongoing cards. And so that is going to help make sure that they can't hit it with an Enchantress, a Rogue, because we know they have a Rogue in hand. This will make sure that they can't hit this with a Rogue. If they go with a Rogue here, that's pretty unfortunate, but I think this is what we go with. They may use their Rogue into the Superflow as well. Ooh, so they go with a Ronin, which is, I mean, that's going to be a great turn 6 At this point, I don't know. We get a Rogue. We're going to flip first. Even if they do an Arnim Zola here, this is just like the awful... This is just... Is this an Arnim Zola? So this is terrible. So our Rogue that we top deck steals their Ronin's ability before Arnim Zola hits it and duplicates it across the board. Oh my gosh. And so they because we rogued it, both Ronins will get an upside from Patriot. Just I can't even. I'm Paris. I am so sorry. I'm so sorry about this game. You didn't deserve any bit of this. So we're gonna go with a Shang-Chi. Ooh, what if they leader? Let's not go with a Shang-Chi. Let's go with an Enchantress instead. If they go with a leader into the Peak, actually, if they go with the leader into Peak, they copy our Shang-Chi and then we win. So it's fine. I think we're fine. I think we're reading a little bit too much into it. They probably retreat here. Oh no, they're a good sport. They stick around. They do morph, which is going to morph into our Leech or Enchantress, our Enchantress. So it takes away some of our upside in both the middle and the right lane. But of course, we had such a strong start to the game that it was not able to. It was not able to be enough. Oh my gosh, Paris, I can't apologize enough. It was like we had the perfect counterplay at every step of the game. Some games are just, I guess, not meant to be. Oh, man. And so with that feels like the perfect way to end the video. I could not ask for a better final finale type game with as many top decks as we got there. Yes, this deck list runs a lot of the kind of cards that are good in a Mr. Negative deck list, but we have a lot of counterplay as well. So it has a lot of wiggle room. If we don't draw into the peak and get the really good inverts, we can still drop Sandman on 4. We can morph on 3, Sandman on 4. We have counterplay potential with like a Rogue, with an Enchantress, with our Ronin. And then for a final turn leader, which is oftentimes enough to get a win anyways, even if we don't get the upside of drawing into peak. But overall, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave it a like and a comment down below. Absolutely insane location, absolutely insane deck list. Thank you for the inspiration for it, Q. I can't wait to play it against you in a live stream. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. As always, this has been TLSG. Later, guys.